Right to go?
Correct.
Welcome everybody to the ordinary meeting of Thursday, 21st of October 2021 via video link. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and pay respect to the elders past and present. This meeting is live streamed on Council's website to allow the community to follow Council debates and decisions. Members of the public participating in a meeting agree to have their image, voice and personal information, including name and address, recorded and publicly broadcast. Snowy Valley's Council does not accept liability for any defamatory remarks or inappropriate comments that are made during the course of a meeting. Any part of the meeting that's held in closed session will not be streamed. Please ensure that mobile phones and other electronic devices are turned off or in silent mode for the duration of the meeting, and no recording of voice or images is permitted. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate the building using the nearest exit and follow the instructions given by the wardens. Do not use the lift. If participating in the meeting from an alternative venue, please enact the evacuation plan to that location if required. Council is now operating under temporary provisions expiring on 31 December 2021 of the Local Government General Regulation 2005, which gives Council discretion to allow councillors to attend remotely under exceptional circumstances, which is what's happening today. Councillors, apologies or leave of absence. I've got a leave of absence from Councillor Cor Smith and Councillor Margaret Isselman. Can I have a mover to accept those? Councillor Benjamin and Councillor Lada. All in favour? That's unanimous, thank you. Public forum, we've got the external auditor, Brad Bowen from Crowhurst, who's online there. There's Brad to address Council on report 10.2, presentation of the 2021 annual financial statements. I'll ask Brad to join us.
Mayor, thanks very much for the opportunity to present the annual financial statements for 30 June for Council. Encouragingly, we are in a position where we've signed our audit reports on the financial statements on the 12th of October. So that's inside the reporting deadline of the end of October. Council's financial statements went through due process in that they were prepared internally by management. There was audit activity. They've gone via Council's Audit Risk and Improvement Committee and ultimately cleared and signed from the New South Wales Audit Office. There are two key items that the Audit Office issues an opinion on. There's the actual audit opinion on the financial statements, which is an unqualified or clean opinion. So that's the aspirationally what we were setting out to achieve at the start of the annual financial reporting process. The other report is the report on the conduct of the audit. It includes some free-form text and gives some views and perspective from the Audit Office on the conduct and outcome of the audit process for 30 June. And it's usually the report that we would speak to when we come to Council, noting that your audit opinion is unqualified or clean. So in terms of the conduct report, the key thing to point out for this year is Council has its RFS assets. It has assets that are RFS ones, which Council does not have recorded within its books and records. Council maintains a view that these assets are not controlled by Council, and there is currently debate and an ongoing conversation about whether they actually are controlled and therefore assets that should be recorded on the books of Council. That's called out on the front page of the conduct report as an observation that is an item that needs to get worked through to completion. What I would point out for you, Mayor, is that Snowy Valleys is not alone here. There's a cluster of other councils in a similar scenario, and I think this issue is being worked through as a block outcome as opposed to something individually that Snowy Valleys needs to take individual action on. In terms of the operating result for the year, Council has achieved an operating result from continuing operations that was a surplus, and a major feature of that is grants revenue. So, and your grant revenue is made up of two components. You've got operating grants and capital grants. And so again, in the 21 year, grants were up on the 2020 year, and one of the main drivers of that links back to some natural disaster activity. Council was significantly impacted by some bushfires going back, and so there was some disaster funding that channeled through. If council takes out the capital grant outcome, you do drop down and show what's called a deficit from operations, both in the 21 year and in the 2020 year. And that's it's also something of a trend for Snowy Valleys. It's a trend that's observable in a range of merger councils, and something that is of vigilance for the ARIC, for ourselves as auditors, because the overlaying requirement in the Local Government Act is this concept of unrestricted funds, and making sure that we don't use externally restricted funds such as water and sewer monies to fund the operations of council, which was something that has received quite an amount of airplay in the last 12 months. So that pulls us through to council's statement of cash flows. If cash is where the focus is, council has very little debt, so very minimal in the way of financing activities. So fundamentally, you're generating cash from operations, and then it's being spent in investing activities. And there's two ways here: either on infrastructure, property, plant and equipment, or if the works program isn't up to that and we've got the funds, usually they're invested in a term deposit type product, and then withdrawn to spend on operations or work program delivery in future years. At the end of 30 June, council held in the vicinity of 38 million, cash and cash equivalents and investments combined together. And the conduct report breaks that down, as is a note in your financial statements that shows the very large majority of that is externally restricted funds, something in the order of 31 million. And then council has internal restrictions of 9.2 million. These internal restrictions are dedicated by vote of council, things like plant replacement reserve, employee leave entitlements, and then a series of other obligations that council has undertaken to the community. And then that pulls down to a level of unrestricted cash. Something somewhat unique for Snowy Valleys in the 30 June 21 is that Snowy Valleys Council had dropped down into negative unrestricted cash. The background to that is that council had some natural disaster activity that had taken place during the year. Corrective works had been performed on those, so the expense had been incurred. The funds coming back to fund that hadn't yet been received from the appropriate government department. This is something in the order, Mayor, of $5.5 million. And so the face value recorded negative 2.4 million in unrestricted cash is really waiting for a receivable to come back against some of those disaster recovery works. Since year end, so since 30 June, around half of that 5.5 has been received from the government department, and the remainder is still yet to come through to council. In terms of debt, as I tagged earlier, council has a relatively low level of borrowings to its overall size, 7.6 million at 30 June, which is down from 8.3 million in the prior year. So council certainly has a manageable level of debt. The next item in the conduct report works through the financial ratios that are included in the financial statements right down towards the rear of them. There's a couple of metrics that should be called out. There's an operating performance ratio. Council has reported a deficit in its operating performance ratio in the last 2 years. And so the break-even target there is zero. So you'd like to have a surplus over a deficit, and probably over a longer-term average is the important metric. And observing that council has this downward trend that's sort of observable through these graphs in the operating performance ratio. And the next one is a metric around own source operating revenue. This dictates, does council generate enough revenue from its own activities, or is it reliant on grant income? Snowy Valleys, like a range of rural regional councils, is very reliant on grant activity. And so the pursuit of getting and obtaining the grant revenue helps deliver the programs and improve services to community members. So whilst we're below the metric, I think that's council's stated position is that it is pursuing grant income, so it will always trend underneath that. And similarly, if you didn't obtain the grant revenue, it would have a downward impact on your on the first ratio, being the operating performance ratio. There's an unrestricted current ratio. What this is tracking is how many in current assets, how many dollars and cents do you have for every $1 of current liabilities. The metric set, the red bar, is set at about holding $1.50. We think having a 50-cent buffer is reasonable in terms of margin. Councils at 30 June held $2.81 of current unrestricted assets for every $1 of liability. So that would say council is solvent in the right here and now and can pay its debts as and when they fall due. What we'd observe from that trend, and I know you've got later a paper around a special rate variation, is that we can see that that margin generally stepping down across the reported period of 19, 20 and 21. The buffer or the margin between that break-even point of $1.50 and council's reported position is continuing to step down each year. The couple of other ratios where council performs strongly is debt service cover ratio. There's really no concerns there about council's ability to make its both principal and interest repayments on the debt it carries, because you carry a relatively low level of debt. The ratepayers have continued to be compliant and pay their rates. Our rates outstanding percentage really is quite strong. Council performs very, very strongly compared to the benchmark that's set by and shared by the OLG. And again, in our cash expense cover ratio, council has something in the vicinity of 8 months worth of cash if to cover 8 months worth of expenses in cash on hand at 30 June without any additional inflows. Those last couple of metrics show that council is certainly above the benchmark minimums. Council spent something in the order of $18.3 million on renewing its assets, and that's fundamentally one of its core purposes as a rural council, is the upkeep of both roads predominantly, and then plant and equipment, and quite an amount in capital works in progress at 30 June relating to some of the restoration and renewal of assets impacted by fire. And the opinion closes out with no observations on negative legislative compliance, and there was a new accounting standard, but it really had minimal impact on council. So if that's an appropriate snapshot of the report on the conduct for council, I'm happy to pass it back across.
Thanks so much, Brad. And councillors, any questions? Consider any questions for Brad. I've got a question for the CFO. Of that $5.5 million that was owed to us by the government, and Brad said a section of that's come back in, how much is still outstanding?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the outstanding amount is $3.1 million, and we have been advised that we can expect that payment next month.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any questions on that public forum? Councillor Ham.
Hello, Brad. Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could talk to Brad. Brad, we've had something that's really concerned me is our past General Manager from the Tumbarumba Shire, Kay Whitehead's written a rather scathing letter that I think you've seen, that's been passed on to you, about the council is glossing over the cash problems and that we're on to a trajectory of slash and burn approach. I'd like to refute that, but I think you're probably better at it than me. Would you mind addressing that letter?
Oh, gee, that's political.
I'm not sure, Julia, that the letter. I think the tone of the letter is that council has a downward trend in its cash holdings, and the linkage for councils statewide is one linked to funding models and service delivery. So if the stakeholders and ratepayers in this instance expect an ongoing level of service delivery, that needs to be funded in a particular manner. The observable trend for Snowy Valleys is that your cash holdings are going down, and what's in today's business papers is an item around raising a special rate variation to help fund and sustain the ongoing operations of council. So that would sit as comments of what we can observe in terms of the each 30 June there's a cutoff period, and we track what council's performance are. Council's performance is fiscally challenged, as is a number of other councils, around maintaining specifically the road network relative to the number of residents that you've got, and then ongoing service delivery and funding items. You've got the unique scenario where in the last period of time there's been together a pandemic and bushfire that had to be addressed. So does that, Julia, sort of cover in a snapshot sense from an external audit perspective? The cash balance is definitely going down, and I think the conduct report speaks to that in the metrics. That would be my sense of that. And
then that we've had a decrease of 66% over the last 4.5 years, from a decrease of $13 million from unrestricted cash, and internal restricted reserves have been on a downward trend, which is what you're saying, but I'm just saying the actual figures that Kay's put into the letter. So I mean, basically what you're saying is, yes, that is true, and yes, that's why we have to look at an SRV or other sustainability measures.
Certainly the trend is taking it down. So your options are curtail the service delivery if the ratepayers are happy for that. So do less. If they want you to keep doing the same amount, you need more funding, or alternatively, there's a rethink of the way council's services is administered and executed. That, you know, they're kind of the three options that you've got, but they're the same three options that every other council has, more or less. So, you know, it probably passes across from there, from strategic direction from the general manager, and then down through the CFO. But you've got things that by statute you're obliged to do. What varies amongst councils is how much cash reserves you would have had. Certain cash streams are not what they used to be in terms of passive income. So council used to have an investment portfolio when interest rates were a little bit higher that provided a reasonable stream of some funding of cash. Interest rates have decreased. Council has a low level of borrowings, but as it seems to be generally acknowledged in communities that the expectation around service delivery has gone up, that comes at a cost. It's how that cost is then funded.
Thank you. Thanks, Brad. Any further questions? Councillor Pritchard?
Just, am I still muted? Yeah.
No, you're right. No, you muted yourself now. You mute, Jeff.
Okay, thanks very much, Brad, for that presentation. It's the clearest one I can recall. It told us what our options are, and what do you think, if we don't put this SRV through, what impact would that have on the council?
Oh, Jeff, that's a tricky one for me. My focus is more looking backwards, and then only a short way forward. The long-term financial plan is more in the domain of the CFO and the general manager. But you know, what we're giving assurance on from an audit perspective is a fairly short timeline. It's out over 12 months from signing, so we're comfortable that council can pay its debts until October 2022. Clearly, as a councillor and the ratepayers would be interested in the long-term financial plan, and that's where those answers would sit, and that's not necessarily inside the remit of what we've tested.
Thank you.
Anything further, councillors? Well, thank you very much, Brad, and wonderful to have you here, and thanks for your insight today, and councillors, thanks for your questions. Councillors, we move on. Actually, we'll move backwards because number 3 is declarations of pecuniary interest. Councillors, I've got one from Councillor Larter. Councillor Larter, do you want to go through your pecuniary interest?
Just into 11.3, so a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest, and I'll remain for the discussion and the vote. And that's basically that I own an aeroplane that's hanging with the Tumut Aero Club.
Thank you. Councillor Benjamin.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to declare a pecuniary interest in relation to report 11.4 due to owning 2 properties in the Valley View estate, and will leave the room during the discussion. And also I'm declaring a non-significant non-pecuniary interest in relation to report 11.6 due to previously engaging in employment with the owner of the property.
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin. Councillors, that brings us to confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting 5.1, the 16th of September 2021. Have a mover for that. Councillor Cross, Councillor Ham. And arising from those? Councillor Ham.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, if I could just talk about 10.2, 4.3 that I voted on, and I missed this point. I'm quite happy with all the other points that are going to the Local Government New South Wales conference, but this point I have a problem with, and so by the time, it's no use rescinding it because of time factors and whatever, but it does say in there the impediment of maintaining rural centre employment numbers for merged councils in achieving long-term efficiencies and savings. And I just want to make the comment that I can understand the CEO's concern with this, but I can also see a community in which employs people in the council. It helps the community with housing, with schooling, with medical services, childcare services. And for that very simplistic reason, I would like to keep the numbers. But the other thing is, I will never forget during the bushfires and the floods and the broken pipes, how quickly people from council have just appeared and fixed these problems and just been there. And when during the bushfires there was no communication with the northern end at all, you know, those employees, they were everywhere working and doing their bit. I just would be really hesitant to make our numbers scarce down the southern end. So why I can't vote against that motion, I certainly do not agree with that point.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Sia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in response to that, Councillor Ham, the matter is about the restriction on the numbers of the whole of the Snowy Valley. So at the moment, as we're heading into an SRB and we're looking at efficiency savings across the organisation, any staff savings or any adjustments in staff numbers has to fully come from the areas outside the rural transaction centre number, not evenly across the whole Snowy Valleys Council area. So it just depends on your interpretation there. And certainly if we do look at some service modifications and movement of those services across to other providers, it means that we have to make those numbers up in that local government, in the former local government area. So it's just about addressing this matter fairly across the whole LGA and across their whole workforce without any restrictions on one particular component of the workforce. But if we do need to go down that track, rest assured it would be a very fair and open process.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors, from those minutes? Okay, all in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. Councillors, moving on to
just got the extraordinary meeting there.
Extraordinary meeting, yeah, I'm just moving through there, and we have to make a small change there because I accepted a an apology from Councillor Larter, and he almost immediately popped up unexpectedly. So we need to change that that he attended.
So Mr. Mayor, you would like a mover with that amendment?
Mover with that amendment. That's correct. So Councillor Benjamin and Councillor Wright. Anything arising from those minutes? Councillor Pritchard, you're on mute. You're on mute still. Still on mute.
Hello, can you hear me?
Gotcha.
Yeah, right. On page 18 of the notice of motion, study various council encourages COVID vaccination. And it's got the for and against. I abstained, and I did not vote against it. And I'd like it recorded after my name that in brackets that abstination.
We can add that, just noting that an abstention is against.
So
you have to leave the room.
Yep.
Well, I would have left the room had I had enough notice, but it was a bit confused and I didn't have time to leave the room. And I certainly don't oppose that motion, but I certainly didn't support the motion as it was.
Okay.
So I think for it to go out into the general public that I opposed that, I think it's damaging to me, and it's not true.
Okay. Thank you. See ya.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, through the Code of Meeting Practice, it does have to be recorded as voting against, as the Code of Meeting Practice talks about. Not voting is a vote against. Just like Councillor Ham has just done with the previous minutes, obviously you've had your statement here to explain that, but it has to be an accurate recording of what happened actually at the meeting.
Well, I'd like to have in brackets on that against, the in brackets afterwards, abstained. That doesn't alter what you're saying, but it does tell the general public that I didn't vote for. I abstained, and it's.
I'm happy with that. If we can amend the minutes to that. Mover and seconder, happy with it?
I can't amend the minutes to that. That's under my control. I have to record what happened at the meeting. The Code of Meeting Practice specifically says if you don't vote, then it is recorded as voting against. Councillor Pritchard has explained the reasons why, and if we get any inquiries, we can explain that. But the minutes have to be an accurate recording of the meeting.
Well, my opinion is that would make it very accurate. But that's my opinion. I know it's your choice, but that's the way I would prefer it. Councillors, I'll put the motion. Anything further from those minutes? I'll put the motion. All in favour? Carried. Against? Against? Any against? No one against? Okay, that's unanimous. Thank you. Takes us to the mayoral minute. So I'll put the mayoral minute. This is just stating our ongoing position on the HumeLink transmission line, and there was some discussion in the community that we hadn't been in the space, but what it does is it highlights our motion from 2020, and it strengthens it a little bit. So I give you the motion. Do I have any speakers for or against? Councillor Ham, Councillor Ham, would you like to explain your position on the your council position on the HumeLink committee?
Sure. I will be attending as a councillor next week, the HumeLink Community Consultative Group. So in saying that, just to do some research, I have actually visited a few properties, talked to people from the Tumut Chamber of Commerce, and probably three things coming strongly through is I do like the visual of, we don't want Tumut to be a bird cage. We just don't want huge wires all around it, which leads to the Chamber of Commerce concern is you can see Tumit's tourism is growing all the time. You know, more and more people are coming to Tumut. This is, you know, great for Chamber of Commerce. Businesses are growing. We want Tumut to remain a very attractive place. And if it's encased with huge wires, that can be a great detraction from tourism. And the third point is, I just keep thinking of this one-off payment for landowners, and had that payment been given 3 years ago, and after the huge property prices, it just would have been laughable. And so I do like that we're sort of like supporting that we want an annual payment, just like they do with towers and mobile towers. Makes a lot more sense. So look, I am yet to go to the committee meeting, but at this stage I say, you know, public lines go on public lands wherever possible.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Councillor Larder.
Yeah, look, I agree with that. You know, I think organisations like the national parks have been getting away with murder in relation to this. I mean, why do they suddenly have all the say in what goes on in relation to these infrastructure projects? You know, why should our amenity and our people have to suffer with this garbage? You know, there's a lot of people very silent here. Once again, I mean, Snowy Hydro needs to come out of their little box as well and start, you know, providing some stuff for the community over this side instead of everything over the other side. I mean, we just seem to get entrenched with all everyone's rubbish, and you know, I think the public's sick of it. We're just sick of being held, you know, to ransom by these organisations like Transgrid that just want to stick these things wherever they feel like it, and not compensate anyone properly or put it where people want it. I mean, stick it in the national park. You know, don't even bother coming through these people's lands if they don't want it. Put it in the state governed area. Don't worry about putting it where we're not happy with it. I mean, you know, somebody's got to find their voice on this. And, you know, these poor farmers are out there battling away behind the scenes and not getting a lot of traction. And, you know, I think, you know, the CEO of Snowy Hydro and a few others need to come out and start dancing up and down about this, because essentially it's feeding their project and everyone's gone silent.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Thanks, councillors. We'll put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to 10.1, presentation of the annual financial statements. We've heard from Brad Bowen. Do I have a mover for that? Councillor Pritchard, Councillor Larder. Councillor Pritchard.
Oh, I think it was an excellent presentation. And,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other speakers? Councillor Ham.
I just want to pick up on a typo on the, what page is it? Page 24, first paragraph, last line, when it says, but depreciation expense reduced by 532 million, it should be 1,000, though millions would have helped us.
Thank you. There was also one on the agenda too, where it was listed as 10.2 and it's actually 10.1, but we got through that. Councillor Cross.
Yeah, look, I wanted to applaud the decision for it to go to ARIC before it comes before council, because I think that really gives that independent overview. So I would like that to continue.
Thank you. Anything further? Thanks, councillors. I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's unanimous again. Thank you. .2, scheduling of council meetings for January 2022. 3 recommendations there. Do I have a mover? Councillor Cross, Councillor Larter. Councillor Cross, anything to comment? No. Any other councillors? Councillor Pritchard.
yes, I think you're having a meeting on the 11th of January for the election of the mayor and deputy mayor and so forth. But I think they should have any urgent business should be put in there as well, because there's going to be a gap between the election of the new council and the first ordinary meeting in January. So it's a fair gap. And I think we should have an opportunity to bring up any urgent business there.
That could happen automatically, but I'm happy to have that inserted in there.
Thank you.
Move in a second to happy with that. Yep. Okay, it's a given anyway. All right. With that insertion, all in favour? Thank you. That's carried unanimously. Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. 10.3 pecuniary interest returns for councillors and designated staff. Everybody's got an interest in this one, so that's Councillor Ham and Councillor Cross. Any comment? Procedural? All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Governance and Finance Report 10.4, Statement of Investments. Councillor Wright, are you moving that? Yep, and Councillor Ham. Councillors, who'd like to comment first? Councillor Ham? Gotcha.
Well, to you, Mr. Mayor, I was wondering if you could just discuss what happened over in Cooma this week and the contract that we've got over there and the significance of it.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Yes, on Monday we went to Cooma and signed a memorandum of understanding with Snowy Monaro Council to do some work on the Bobbian Road. So that's a good opportunity for some of our works crew to do some exciting work, which they're quite capable of, and they've done quite a lot of this sort of work before. So it gives us an opportunity to keep them occupied and also earn some additional income for the council. So it's great to see that, to call in to see the works crew working there. You know, it will be a great boon for Adaminaby having the Bobbian Road up and running. So $20 million to be spent there. And I know that property prices up that road have already increased significantly. So it was interesting to hear the general manager of Snowy Monaro saying that he had some years ago, when he was the general manager of Tumbarumba Council, gone over to Canberra via the Brindabella Road with the mayor of the time, George Martin, to advocate for the Brindabella Road. And his comment there made a lot of sense, in that if the Bobbian Road's done up and then eventually we get some money for the Brindabella Road, it would be a nice tourist loop as well for the people of Canberra. So, you know, it's good to have people like that on side, and it's good to have an opportunity for our works crew to be working on an exciting project like this. So thank you, Councillor Ham. Any other? Councillor Cross?
I wanted to, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could ask the CFO, I note that we're going to be doing investing for a longer term, and I wondered if there were any risks associated with that, and if so, what would they be for us?
CFO?
For you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Cross. There is always risk involved in investing council's money, but this is actually a risk mitigation strategy that we're spreading out our investment over a longer term and are risk mitigating interest rate movements, whether they be up or down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Financial performance as of 31 August 2021. Mover. Councillor Ham. Councillor Larder.
I would just like to congratulate the CFO and her team on, look, I know it's only the second month of the year, but you're spot on with your budgeting, very close. It's just, you know, last year this time, you know, you had grants coming in, you had bushfire recovery and everything. It was very hard to see what was happening. But yeah, no, this looks good. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? No? Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Notification of IPART intent to apply for special rate variation. 10.6, mover. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross. Councillor Ham, you get to speak first.
Well, I was going to ask whether we should go into committee about this, Mr. Mayor.
I think that's a grand idea. And you're moving that way?
I am moving that way.
And do you have support? Councillor Cross, all in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Ham, you'd like to speak first?
Yeah, look, well, the first thing I want to say is how this is part of a process. This is not our council saying this is what we're going to be doing. To me, I'm very, very much aware that this is the new council's decision. This is not our decision. And for that reason, I support very much this recommendation that we do the SRV with 17.5 plus 17.5, because that then gives us the flexibility to cut back, it gives us flexibility to move. It doesn't mean that's what it is, but it does mean that, you know, we can go back down on that. So we are not making a decision for the next council. This will now be completely this new council's decision. But as a councillor of this council, I do want to say I love where I live. I love the towns, the way they are looking good. I really appreciate the bushfire recovery that is still ongoing. I appreciate that the roads are of such good standards, and I'm not a big fan of selling off a lot of the assets of which are part of our communities. So I do believe that we do have to have some type of special rate variation, and I thank the people who have come along to listen to Morrison and Lowe and the feedback you have given us.
Thank you, Councillor Ham. Councillor Cross.
And I endorse what Councillor Ham says. I really appreciate the fact that people gave up of their time to join in with the conversation. It was very disappointing about the number that did. So it really didn't give us a true indication of the whole community. But what came through clearly for me was the fact that people want the services that they have already to remain as they are, and they don't want the assets that we have to disappear. So it's going to be a very challenging balancing act for the next council to have to decide. But I know that there will be opportunities for people to have more conversations before that decision gets made. But to me, it's given what we've heard from the external auditor today, it is the right thing to do to maintain our beautiful community for everyone to enjoy.
Any other councillors? Councillor Pritchard.
I would speak against it because we're basically in caretaker mode. I don't think we have a right to put forward anything about a rate increase. I think it's a job for the new council, absolutely. It's only a short time, and I think for us to put up a what's virtually a 38% increase in rates is, just cannot support it. It has to be out to the new council. Let it be an election issue. These 38% I get from the 17.5%, and then that's added onto the base rate for the next 17.5, which is basically another 3%. So it comes to a total of 38%. And the killer on it all, as to my mind, is a permanent increase. I've been involved in local government for a fair time, and the special rate variations we had been for specific purposes for a limited period of time, and it reverts back to the base rate. So I'm not saying I'm against it all, but it's not my position. It's not my right. I think it's for the outgoing council to impose this on the new council. I think it's very wrong.
Well, a couple of points there, Councillor Pritchard. We're very close to caretaker mode, but we're not in caretaker mode. And the second one is what we're doing now is we're just moving another step along the road, and we're providing an option for the next council. And they might come along with some better options, but at least they will have the option of a special rate variation rather than having to wait another maybe 12 months.
I've had no part of it.
Okay, no, that's your right decision.
I think what I foreshadow that I'll move a rescission motion once if this is voted on, and they'll put it off for another month, and we will be in caretaker mode, and we will have to leave that then to the next council.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Any other councillors? Look, I just like to say that certainly I don't want to pay any more rates personally, but you know, this is going to be a very, very difficult decision for the next council. And as I said, there may be some councillors elected to the next council who have some options that can assist the council in becoming more financially sustainable. But to date, I haven't been presented with very many options other than, you know, the simplistic statement that it should be user pays. And I guess, you know, anyone that's been in local government long enough will know that, you know, that's not the way it works. And it's very difficult to do. So anyhow, Councillor Larder.
I was just going to ask, what's the ramifications of this? Just for explanation for people listening. So it's not binding. That's correct.
That's correct. There's I'll ask the CEO to explain the timeline.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Larder, yes, we're required to notify IPART of an intention to apply, and that's what this report is about. Then council in January gets to make a decision about what it actually applies for. And then when the new council goes through its budget process, they again get to make that decision. At each three of those stages, council can't go above, but it can go below. So the intention to apply for 17.5% by 2, which includes the rate peg, is, if you like, a maximum. So the new council then gets to choose what the mix is about what its application is. So of service level reduction, efficiency gains, and a special rate variation. Then IPART goes through its own process there about consulting the community, and then IPART makes a decision and notifies council. And then in our budget process, we go through and make all those decisions again about service level, efficiency savings, and an SRV if IPART allows us to do that. So it's been a very long process and a number of community engagement stages to get the opinion of the community about what they would like. And this provides the maximum, if you like, in the intent to IPART.
Well, just from my point of view, I think on that basis, I think Councillor Pritchard is 100% right. I think this should be an election issue, and you know, I don't think that this council should be making a decision that binds us into something. So, I mean, I'll support it only because it's not binding, and you know, I think it should be an election issue for all those that are standing about how they propose to fund the council services into the future, because it is an important aspect of what we do. So as long as it's not binding, you know, I'll support it, and it should be a decision of that new council.
I think there's no doubt it's going to be a very interesting council election program with people talking about whether they'll support it or not. I think that's probably going to be the making of it, isn't it, really, or the breaking of it. And like that Chad's CEO said, it's not binding on our part. All we're doing is giving them an opportunity for us to be able to help them rather than hamstring them by another year of mucking around, I guess. And so I think I'm supporting it with a clear mind that all we're going to be doing is supporting the new council, which I know I won't be part of.
Thank you, Councillor Wright.
I think what you said, Councillor Wright, is 100% right, because it's very easy to sit on the sidelines and you know, say you're going to do this and you're going to do that and you're not going to support this and you're not going to support that. The reality is, when you're actually in here and you know you've got to make those decisions, it's not easy. And you know, I think that those that are putting their hand up for election should be, you know, able to demonstrate to the community how they are going to fund it and what their views are on it. I think it's very important that they do that, rather than, you know, make out that you know, they're going to save the world by doing whatever. I just don't know how you do it.
Yeah, Councillor Cross.
No, I would support what Councillor Lauder is saying. We've been on this journey. We've been privy to all of the workshops, all of the ins and outs of it, all of it. And I just hope that the new council will show due diligence in making their decision. It is a very difficult decision, and it's one that I know has kept me awake at night, worrying about what to do. No one likes paying more for things, but at the end of the day, we have to abide by what the community is telling us, and they're saying they want the services that they are used to keep going.
Thank you. Anything further, councillors? Someone moved that we go out of committee. Councillor Wright, Councillor Ham, all in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. So we've got the recommendation there. There's 7 recommendations. Any further comment on those? Put the recommendation. All in favour? Against? So we've got Councillor Pritchard against. The motion is carried. Thank you. Um, 11.1, lease of the rail precinct in Chermont. There's 4 recommendations there. Councillor Cross, Councillor Larder, Councillor Cross.
I'm really, really disappointed that we actually have to, that John Holland doesn't seem to be doing anything. It has the funding agreement through the state government to provide services to maintain the rail corridors and the rail infrastructure. And so far, I haven't seen them doing anything. So I'd like to know what action we can take further to get something happening down there, because to lose those buildings would be a tragedy, because they're part and parcel of our cultural heritage.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. I'd imagine that these recommendations will mean that something happens.
I hope so.
Yeah. Any other speakers? Councillor Pritchard.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, this is distressing to see the railway precinct fall into such disrepair. It's not only the buildings, it's the pathway behind it, which will be ultimately an extension of the Riverwalk. But I'm interested in the polish shed because I helped set up the thing in the first place. I'm not on the committee, so I've got no interest. I'm still a member, not a very active member. But the building's deteriorating very seriously. It's hardwoods, sleepers are rotting, and it needs a lot of maintenance. And it's beyond the capacity of the council to maintain it. Whether we can get some grants from historical bodies to redo the whole area, I'm not sure. That'd be a tragedy for the town if we lost it.
Yes, and of course it is a large precinct as well. It's not a small precinct, and there's numerous buildings and land on it. Okay, anything further? So we've got 4 recommendations there. I'll put the recommendations. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Classify land purchased 14 Tyrrell Street, Cancoban, lot 3. 2 recommendations there. Councillor Ham, Councillor Cross, Councillor Ham.
I'd just like to say thank you very much for finally getting this done. This has been going on for a long time now. It would be over 4 to 5 years. I would like to ask whether this is it now. Okay, it goes to operational classification, and then can we sell the land and move on? Is that the next step?
Mr. Halton.
Sorry. Yes,
There he is.
we can move on, and we would go through the regular process and sell the land.
So can I just be clear on that? What is the regular process? So this gets approved today. Tomorrow, can there be a for sale sign on it, and does it go to auction or whatever? Because I mean, land prices, and particularly down there, are just going ballistic. So what is our process?
Yeah, we can sell the land. It's not community land. It's not public land, so we can sell it through a regular process. Yes.
Sorry.
It's
The time frame, because we want to capitalise on the market.
Through the chair, if I may. So the process for disposal of land is regulated, as Mr. Holton has indicated there. That will require a resolution of council, and that won't be a resolution that I would recommend going to the November meeting, so it's likely to go in front of the new council. However, I believe that I don't think the land prices are going to adjust significantly downwards during that period of time.
I'm just surprised that it wasn't included with this recommendation.
Yeah, can we, through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry to interrupt, but can't we make that point 3, that once it's done, we can start the process?
Through the chair, you could include a third point there to delegate to the Mayor and CEO to proceed under the procurement process of council for a sale of the land.
Mover and seconder, happy with that?
Very.
That might speed things up.
Are you
Councillor
right
Cross.
for us to record that, or do you want me to do an amendment there and share the screen on it?
No, look, I think it's recorded here already. Councillor Cross.
Can I just add, I think putting it in today is critical, because we've got Christmas coming up and people are going to be visiting Cancoban and falling in love with it and want to buy some land in there. So strategically, I think it's a good move.
Thank you, Councillor Cross. And it's close to trout streams and the snow. Councillor Ham.
If there was a 4th recommendation, I would recommend to put it to auction, only because I know that there are a number of people very interested in this land.
That'll be one of the options. That'll be part of our procurement policy, I guess. So
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works.
Through the chair, if I might say that it's an operational matter about whether that goes to auction first. So I note the councillor's sentiment on that matter, and we'll consider that when we go through that policy process.
Thank you.
righto, councillors, we've got 3 recommendations there now. Anything further? No, I'll put the motion. All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. Sherman Aerodrome, additional hangar space. 6 recommendations. Mover. Councillor Wright, Councillor Ham. Councillor Wright, any comments? No. Anyone else? Any comments?
Would we be able to have the, sorry, Councillor Lata, but I just thought it'd be good to have the Director of Infrastructure talk on this.
Yes, Executive Director, Infrastructure. Hines, you there? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I suppose just summarising the content of the report. Following an expression of interest process for the last remaining hangar site, we determined that there's significant demand for further hangars. We had 5 expressions of interest through that process. Very, very committed to acquiring a hangar at the aerodrome. And out of that process, we've elected to put this proposal to council that we set up space for an additional 6 hangars, recognising that we've already got identified demand for 5 of those, and we expect that the 6 would also be picked up fairly quickly. And the time to do this is quite opportune because of the aerodrome improvement works that are currently happening, in that we can incorporate making this space available at the aerodrome as part of that project for no additional cost to council. We do recognise, however, that the additional hangar space is in contradiction to the existing master plan for the site. So we've also identified in the recommendation there that we need to review the master plan and update that and bring that back to council as well. And that update will include both the allowance for the additional hangars and also, the improvement works that are currently kicking off on the site. However, in saying that, we're proposing to proceed with making the space available for the 6 additional hangars prior to bringing that revised master plan back to council. I hope that covers it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any further questions? Yes, Councillor Cross.
It would seem quite opportune to do this too, because I know in Canberra people would prefer to, don't like having their planes out there because it's very expensive. So if we can offer them, and we're so close to Canberra, I think it's about 20 minutes by flying, then we can offer Canberrans the opportunity to come here, which would open up tourism opportunities as well.
Okay. Councillor Larder.
I commend the report and Mr. Cash for the excellent work that's gone on behind the scenes with the team to achieve that, especially in light of the bigger project that's at foot. There's a lot of work going on behind the scenes there with the upgrade of the airport, obviously. So to be able to get this report to us so quickly was good. But I'm just wondering whether there is some scope to expand on that again. Because I think 6 are going to be snapped up quickly. Yeah. And I'm thinking probably, at least maybe 10 or we don't want to be in a situation where we can't accommodate people. And that's what's going to happen, I think, because, this is a pretty special sort of project we've got happening here. And whether that is going to be lease again, or whether we can look at, expanding that to basically having a freehold situation where people pay rates.
Maybe that's part of the new master plan, possibly. But certainly, like an extension of those hangars would be something that you'd have in the back of your mind, if not in the front of your mind.
What it demonstrates, though, is that the decision of the council to go ahead with this project, and to have an appetite to actually expand that airport. The fact that we've got virtually 6 hangars ready to be filled up is a glowing, endorsement of Snowy Valleys Council and that we're open for business, and that this is a significant infrastructure achievement, and we should be very proud of it.
Certainly. Anything further, councillors? Okay. Put the motion. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Uh, 11.4, Councillor Benjamin, you've declared an interest in this one. So we'll put you in a room, or somebody will. You're going to CEO.
In progress now.
Just like that. Righto. So here we go. We've got 6 recommendations there. Thanks for the report. It's good to get those diagrams in that report. It makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure people can understand it. Mover. Councillor Cross, Councillor Ham. Councillor Cross.
Having worked at Franklin Public School, I can certainly see that there is a huge need for it. We don't want children walking on the street, as indicated in the maps that were sent through. But I would like to ask the Director of Infrastructure whether consideration could be given to using recyclable materials to build the footpath rather than cement.
Executive Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Cross. Yes, very much agree that we should be looking into that. So when we get to the pre-construction phase, I'll make sure that consideration is given to using recycled materials as and if available to us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ham. Then Councillor Chris.
Just Executive Director of Infrastructure, if I could, Mr. Mayor, just saying endorse seeking external funding. I presume that is the Department of Education. And what chances have we got of getting 39,000 from the Department of Education to do this?
Mr. Corsh.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for the question, Councillor Ham. I suppose we're trying to leave it as open as we can. Certainly recognise the need to work in partnership with the Franklin Public School, and if there's any opportunities through that partnership to take advantage of those. But we also recognise that securing funding through a school can be very difficult, and we're also intending to make applications ourselves as opportunities arise. And then if we can't secure funding between now and the end of the financial year, we've suggested there in item 5 in the recommendation that we reconsider funding opportunities and maybe even consider as part of the budget process for 22-23, so we don't lose sight of this important project.
And so there's no way we can put this into the next QBR?
Given where we are financially and the discussions we've been having about financial sustainability, I think if we were to try and find internal funding for this within the QBR process, we'd have to give something else up. And yeah, from an infrastructure perspective, we're running very tight as it is. So I'd struggle to find something else. We'd have to stop doing something or take something out of the program to be able to allocate funding to this item.
Thank you. Good. Councillor Cross.
Surely, as it's a matter of safety for children, surely there would be grants out there that we could tap into for that to speed up in getting it happening.
I'd imagine there would be. Anything further? Councillor Pritchard, you're next.
Yes, the developer contributions should cover residential developments like this. I suppose it's too late in this case, but it's obviously the thing has to go ahead. You can't have kids not having proper access to the school, but the estate developers should be hit for that they do for the water and sewerage and so forth. There used to be a developer contribution fund. Is that still in existence?
CEO.
Through the chair, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Pritchard, yes, we do have developer contributions funds. We'd have to go back and look at where those reserves are at. We have allocated a lot of those reserves to projects over the past few years. I don't think the footpath fund is very high at all, but certainly we can look at that opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Anything further? We've got six recommendations there. Put the motion. All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you. CEO, can you bring Councillor Benjamin back?
I can, Mr. Mayor, it'll just take 10 seconds for Councillor Benjamin to join back in. And just like that, she's back.
Thank you, Councillor Benjamin, for your information. That was passed unanimously, those 6 recommendations. 11.5, transfer of SVC community services programs. We're looking at possibly amending this recommendation. So do I have a mover? Councillor Ham, would you like to move with any amendment?
With the amendment, yeah. Yes. I was thinking in recommendation point 3, providing principal endorsement to proceed with the development of a transition plan, undertake all due diligence required for the transfer of Snowy Valleys Council Commonwealth Home Support Program, funding contracts, programs and associated assets to an accredited provider of such programs and services following an expression of interest process.
Thank you. You say moving that, seconder? Councillor Wright, thank you. Okay, Councillor Ham.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a bit distressed to see that the report that gave so much information about this was in confidential, but I have heard since that it has been released, because that certainly made me feel a bit more comfortable about this whole topic. Is you know, the aged care as is at the moment in Tumbarumba, you know, is to remain as such. But just the report talked about how difficult this home support program is, with changing regulations, with money that had been paid in advance is now going to be paid in arrears, increasing accreditation to be, which it should be accredited, and there's a lot more spot visits. It just seems to be getting a lot more specialised. So I can see the reason, and it's not that different from other services which are accredited, and I understand how it's good to have, you know, experts running running the services. However, what I am concerned about is the welfare of the staff. This you know, historically it's written in the report how long it's been going, and it's certainly been very much part of the community throughout the whole of Snowy Valleys Council, and these people have been part of the Snowy Valleys Council, and to whoever the provider is, you know, what is that transition going to look like, and what's the time frame? Yeah, I could ask.
So who would you like your question directed to?
Probably the Executive Director of Community and Corporate, Snowy Valleys Council.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. The report that we have that is before you, that is the council report, not the report of the review, does cover off on consideration has also been given to the sensitivity impacts a transfer will have on council staff in these programs. So it is anticipated that the council staff in the community services programs would have the opportunity to transfer their employment to the identified accredited organisation to which the contracts would transfer. So we have begun internal discussions with impacted staff that would be impacted by a decision of this nature, and we have advised the relevant unions that this report was going up to council. It is a fundamental principle that the staff would in fact be treated fairly and with dignity through the whole process. And as I said before, and I'll reiterate it, it is anticipated that those staff would still be required to deliver those services in those locations, and it would be a prerequisite for the selection of the organisation to whom those contracts would transfer.
Thank you, Mr. Holt.
And the time frame? if this is passed today? What sort of timeframe are we looking at?
Well, as the recommendation indicates, we would need to bring another report back to a future council meeting for determination of the matter to proceed with the transfer once the transition plan and the due diligence is undertaken. I would anticipate that wouldn't get to council before February, and we would anticipate that the transition could be achieved if it was supported by the end of the financial year in readiness for the beginning of the new financial year.
Councillor Wright.
I feel I'm totally against it, to be quite honest. I think, you know, these, as Councillor Ham said earlier on, they've been in our communities, these services for years and years and years. And, you know, I just think it's a shame that we're going to lose control of it. It's going to go out of our hands. It'll go into some other money-making venture who will do whatever they like, because they can say whatever they want to us today, but 6 months down the road, they'll do whatever they want to do anyway. And I don't, you know, it's another thing I think we should leave to the next council, group, and you know, and make it an election point. You know, let them work to it. I think it's too late in the year for us. And as Councillor Pritchard said earlier on, you know, I think this is a massive thing. I don't think we should be supporting it yet. I reckon you should leave it till the next council. I'm totally against it. I really am. I'm not very often this passionate about things, but I really feel passionately about this.
I was, given what Mr. Holton said, I think it is a decision of the next council.
Yeah, but I don't think we should support it to start off with.
Okay. Yep.
That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
And my community's opinion.
Councillor Cross.
I can appreciate where Councillor Wright's coming from, but I understand that the former Tumbarumba Shire provided these services in aged care because there was no one else available to do that. We've had a huge influx of private providers in the market, and as Councillor Hammer said, getting specialist services in can often provide much better quality of services, or much better or different services. So I'm wondering if there have been providers that have entered the market since this that can be brought in to provide these services within Tumbarumba.
Quite interestingly, I had a phone call last night from a community representative of a group that's being formed with the aim of taking over these provisions. So it would be back to being locally administered and organised. So I was of the impression that you know, they were happy to go that way. So I'm getting a few different impressions here. Anyhow, Councillor Cross.
And I have another question too for the Director of Community and Corporate, that if Council does continue to manage these services, given that there are significant changes as a result of royal commissions and so on, and changes to the service delivery model with funding, what imposts is that going to put on Council with regard to reporting, with regard to accreditation, with regard to administration? Would that make greater change for Council in the way it has to operate moving forward?
Mr. Holton.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there are some impacts with what is being anticipated down the line. That is a shift from block funding to funding in arrears, where the service is delivered and Council then needs to claim the cost of providing that service after the service has been provided. There already exists I guess, a disconnect between council's accounting and reporting processes, because ours are set up for a local government purpose, and the sector has increasingly become more, I guess, sophisticated, and the demands around accountability, reporting, and particularly when you're dealing with such a, I guess, an at-risk cohort, where there are, significant encumbrances upon the people providing those services to ensure that they are reported effectively and fairly. So getting our systems to mesh with the systems that are there from the funding authorities are already cause considerable amount of administrative burden internally. So there's a duplication of a lot of work. And as of, I think, the beginning of the new financial year, there are further changes to those systems, which would require council to invest in further software to enable council to meet the basic requirements of reporting back into the agencies that provide the funding. So there are already a significant amount of changes that are in the pipeline that will increase that administrative burden to council.
Thank you.
Councillor Ham.
Just to be clear about this, so we're receiving the notes and report on the transfer, but we're also we're receiving the report on aged care completely that was given by the consultant. Is that not correct? Yeah,
well, sorry.
No, you go. Yeah, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The consultant's report is I guess it's an operational review with a range of observations around the provision of those services, and has informed the direction put forward in the officer's report that is in front of you and the recommendations. And I would reiterate that what the recommendation is saying is to endorse in principle to proceed with the development of a transition plan and undertake the relevant, the due diligence, but bring a report back to a future meeting of council to allow council to make a determination whether to proceed or not.
So there's still a get out of jail clause here. We can still, the new council can not go with this if that's the case. And then point 3 will allow, I don't want it to be seen that we have chosen the provider. So that expression of interest now will allow any provider to put up their hand if we decide to go down that way. Yep. Excellent.
And I think also it's within the 3 months, the January meeting, so it could be rescinded anyway.
Yeah.
I must say I'm sorry, but with respect to everybody, but I still don't trust it. Still don't believe in it. I don't trust it. I don't think we should be doing it. Not this year. It's too close to the end of our term.
Thanks, Bruce. Anyone else? I guess that closes argument anyway, Bruce. I'll put the motion. All in favour? 1, 2. Okay, against? Okay, that gives me the casting vote, so I will vote against this. Thank you. Moving on. $11.6. Review of determination for Lot 11 Bombolly Avenue. Mover. Councillor Lada, seconder. Councillor Cross. Do you want to go into committee, or do you just want to move on this? No? Okay. Councillor Larder.
Well, I'd be happy to defer this. I'll move it for the purposes of debate, but I'd be happy to see this this deferred until the applicant has the opportunity to submit an evacuation and egress plan in line with the requirements for the development. And if they're able to do that and it satisfies the technical requirements of the council, then it could be put to council in accordance with council's policies within the appropriate time frame, if that can be arranged.
And that is what the proponent has asked us to do. Councillor Wright.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Larder and you there, Mr. Mayor. I think we should defer it. You know, they've asked for us to defer it. They reckon have all the knowledge, so I think we should just defer it. Do as they ask, and let them get. That's right.
Thanks, Councillor Wright. Any other councillors? Councillor Pritchard.
Yeah, it's just that you look around the world and the flooding is getting worse and worse and worse in every country in the world, and climate change has not really been addressed. And I think if anything's marginal, we shouldn't be susceptible to flooding, and we shouldn't be supporting it. That's simple as that.
Thank you, Councillor Pritchard. Councillor Cross.
Just recently, we had the Bomboli bridge closed because of minor flooding. So it really concerns me that that is the only road in and out of the proposed dwelling being built. So I'm just a bit concerned as to how they think they're going to get around that. So whilst I can appreciate the fact that we want that there's a move to defer it, I really can't see how that will solve the issue, which is the bridge and getting in and out of the property.
I think the issue is that the whole property floods, and anyone who looks at the business paper will see the photographs there. And that's not going to go away. And as Councillor Pritchard said, the flood, extreme weather events are soon to be increasing. So, you know, we've got to be cognizant of that. So, but deferring it will give them more time, and that's what they've asked for. Councillor Ham, you also had your hand up. Yeah, mute.
I'm very aware that we're talking about someone's hopes and dreams here, and someone who's bought this property and, you know, has put a lot of money and thought, and, you know, you can read it in the application. You know, that this is someone's hopes and dreams that we're playing with, and if they are able to come up with a solution that suits, I think, and that they need more time for that, I think go for it. Let's defer it.
Okay. Anything further, councillors? So we've moved the recommendation, but what's the process?
Well, I'm happy to make an amendment to that if everyone's happy, that we note the recommendations and defer the matter to subsequent meeting.
So Councillor Larder's moved an amendment. Do I have a seconder for the amendment?
Can I just, Mr. Mayor, just process-wise, the mover and seconder should withdraw their motion because it's a separate motion. So if we can record the withdrawal of the motion first and then move the alternative motion.
So we're not having an amendment, we're having an alternative motion.
It's not an amendment if it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, okay. So it was a long bow, but mover and seconder, happy to withdraw? Yeah. Yep, okay. So Councillor Lard is moving an alternative motion, which is that we defer. Seconder? Councillor Wright. Any further discussion? Put the
Can we
motion
get,
on.
sorry, did we get some advice from Mr. Holton on the deferral and the timeframes for the DA?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the normal time frame is 6 months from the matter needs to be determined within 6 months of the original decision under Section 8.2. However, in response to the COVID pandemic, the referral time or the statutory time frame has extended to 12 months. So this can be deferred as long as it's determined within 12 months, so by April next year.
Very serendipitous. Thank you. Anyone else? So we'll put the motion that we defer. All in favour? Against? Councillor Pritchard's against. Okay, moving on to the next one. $11.7, which is the lot next door, and I would imagine it's only fair to defer this one as well. So, alternative motion, Councillor Ham, that we defer, same as before. Seconder, Councillor Wright. Any discussion? All in favour of deferring? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving on to minutes of the Aboriginal Liaison Committee meeting. Councillor Pritchard, you moving that?
Yes, that's you.
Seconder. Councillor Larder. Anything to report, Councillor Pritchard?
Not really. I mean, it speaks for itself. It's difficult. I set up the Aboriginal Liaison Committee many years ago, and it's maturing a little bit now, but it's you've got different families and different groups and things, and we have to be very careful on how we deal with them. And I think I've taken the attitude of sitting back and just following what they're wanting and support anything that they want. I really hope that we can alternate the meetings at Aboriginal venues and council venues and so forth. But I think we've solved the problem really with the Zoom meetings, because some of the members of the Aboriginal Liaison Committee live a long way out of town. They need to have some support in getting access to the electronic media, and I think it will progress, but we just have to be very difficult, as we have been doing, in letting them run the show. I won't be standing again, and so we need to, how we get a council representative on there, I'm not sure whether we nominate somebody or ask the committee to nominate a council that they'd like to have on, which would probably be the preferable way of doing it. But I think we can leave that up to the new council.
And Councillor Pritchard, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank you for all the work you've done with the Aboriginal Liaison Committee and with the Aboriginal community in general. So it's been remarkable, and thank you very much.
Thank you, James.
Councillor Ham, you wanted to make a slight amendment, did you? Or?
Yes, if I could. I think there's a bit of a typo in recommendation number 3. Defer consideration of a request from a Narragansett representative on the committee until such time as a vacancy arises, because there are certainly already Narragansett people on the committee, so that doesn't really make sense.
Okay, happy with that change. Moving a seconder. Yep. Okay. Anything further? We'll put the minutes of the Aboriginal Liaison Committee meeting. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. Minutes of the ARIC meeting. Councillor Cross. Councillor Larter, thank you. Councillor Cross, anything?
I think we've exhausted the subject so far.
I think you're pretty right. Any other councillors comment? All in favour? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
Just before you wrap up the meeting, can I just note on item 11.2, due to the extra matter of selling that land coming up, I didn't mention that we would need authorisation for the seal on that. So can I suggest that council passes additional resolution for item 11.2 that states the council authorise the mayor and the CEO to apply the seal to the sale of land 14 Tyrrell Street, Cancoban as Lot 3 DP 123-992.
And the move and seconder happy with that, or do you want a separate motion?
Separate motion, I believe is appropriate.
Okay, so mover, Councillor Wright, Councillor Ham, any discussion? All in favour? All in favour? Councillor Ham, Councillor Ham. Thank you very much. That's passed unanimously. And councillors, that concludes our meeting. Thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you everyone for listening and watching.